Carmichael is the AMA Supercross champion once again.
Chad Reed will pick up the title.
Your lifelong dream just came true.
Even nothing feels better than the first one.
There we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Title 24, presented by NBC Sports. Mention our partners, United Motorsports, Quad Lock, Boxo, and Dunlop, proud partners of Title 24. RV is on the road, taking Brax and Gage back home from Spring-a-Ding and the Spring Amateur Nationals. So we gave him the day off. And man, you guys probably know, well, if you're watching this show, you know who our special guest is. But if you're only tuned in to the audio version of Title 24 this week, man, we got a special guest, someone that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, not only for his accolades of motocross and supercross, but who he is, number one, as a person, as a friend, the impact he has made on the SMX world. And just who he is as a person, a family man, and a father, of course. And that is three-time AMA champion and all new American Motocross Hall of Fame inductee, and that is Chad Reed. Aaron, bring Chad in here. There he is. Reedy, what's up? What's happening? Welcome to Title 24, brother.
What's happening, my man? Just I displayed helmets. I didn't know we were doing trophies and number one plates, but you got me covered on that one anyway.
No. So everybody tuned in today. Thanks for tuning in. Pumped that you came on, Chad. I know you're busy. Know the kiddos are riding, but dude, there's so many people, and I'm sure like you, dude, I get asked so many times about our battles and what that was like. We'll get into it a little bit later. But first and foremost, you had an incredible SMX career, two-time Supercross champ, multi-time regional 250 champ, I believe. And then you won the 450 MX championship as well. Just an absolute warrior. You know that. And what was it? Fifth winningest Supercross racer of all time. Did you ever expect to accomplish what you did, when you were a little kid from Australia?
You know what's funny is I don't know how it was for you, but like I never had numbers in my head, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, I want to be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 Supercross champion or X amount of races. It was just the goal was to make it out of Australia and race AMA Supercross. Now we know it as SMX. Did I want to win races and championships? Yes, but like there wasn't a number. It wasn't like I wasn't chasing anything other than just the goal of being the very best that I could be. And that's what I kind of just chased that dream the whole time.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's hard to say, like, did I, over or underperform? It's funny because I always expected it. Like I didn't see it any other way. But I didn't have a number in my head to be, either good or bad, proud or not proud.
Yeah, well, you have, dude, I can tell you this much, and I'll never forget this quick story is when they first did the World Supercross round, and I think what was that leading into the 2000 and
end of 02, I think.
That's right. And then, so Goose went there, and when he came back, I think we did like one more round of testing before it came over stateside. And he's like, dude, you guys better keep your eye on Chad. Like he looked really, really good. And obviously I watched you in the 250 class, you know what I mean? And I've said it before. I completely got caught out. You just, dude, it was like, you caught me off guard for sure. And Goose was right. And when Goose told me, he's like, hey, you need to keep your eye on this guy. He's riding really well over there. And I'm like, all right. I think I was so focused on Villman at the time, just because, dude, he was kind of the next guy after like McGrath. And it was the dude that once I'd beaten MC, then Villman was a thorn in my side. And then, dude, you just leapfrogged him. And like looking back, and and I was kind of the same way that you were also, Reedy, is like, I never thought about like, man, I want to go out and win X amount of Supercross championships. It was really one season at a time, one race at a time. And then, after things are over, our career's over, you're like, well, I won this, I did this, and I didn't do this. And it was very similar. But did you expect to do as well as you did in 2003? Like you really emerged, in my opinion, there.
It's the one thing that I think that we commonly have that we all have in common is that, like, and what makes me favorite about, my favorite era, yourself and James, and is that I just think individually we all just wanted to race and you wanted to succeed. And it wasn't like, at least for me, like, it wasn't record books, it wasn't anything. It was just like, you were living so in that moment and chasing that goal that weekend. And you kind of lived and died by that sword. And I think that sometimes I fell to the sword. Sometimes I learned a lot, especially in 2003, like the year you're talking about. I obviously witnessed and I watched 2002. I was an East Coast rider. I jumped in and out of a couple of West Coast 250 Supercross back then. That was the premier class. I think I got a couple of fourths. You crashed at the first one. And so I kind of knew, I felt the temperature, right? Like I kind of was like, you know what, I got this. I think I can do it. You went 24-0 in motocross in 2002. And I just remember watching it still to this day, just thinking, God, all these fools let this guy win every race, Never did I think that I was going to be a part of, the 04, 24-0 that you went and did. And and it's still today, I'm embarrassed to say that, like, I let you win every race. But I just remember being that typical, just cocky kid, like, dude, these guys suck, like they're just letting this guy win every race. You came back from a big deficit on points in Supercross. And so I kind of just was a big sponge, like I wouldn't say I was old, but I was older, like I obviously had to make the transition from Australia to Europe. I think I was more mature than my age. I had to be, like I always had to grow up. I always had to race. I was raced in Indonesia a bunch since I was 11 years old. You don't want to go to Indonesia, Indonesian hospital. So I kind of learned to be clever and smart and kind of ride within my limits early on. Didn't have parents around a lot at some of those races. And so I don't know, there was just something in the back that always kind of was just like, just do what you got to do. But like, sometimes the goal was finishing the weekend than not. And so basically after 2002, that whole off season, the only guy that I felt could beat you that year was Villeman, like you said. And the data that I had to go off of looked pretty good, like he was the guy that, threatened. But then being young and dumb, I also was like, dude, Ricky still smoked him. So then you kind of always like, there was always this ghost. And I really think that that's something that separates maybe us. I don't know. Yeah. But it separates the good from, well, maybe the greats. I don't like putting you're the great, right? Like you're the GOAT. I don't like putting yourself in the GOAT great conversation. I think, but I raced a lot of great people. And I was always able to be amongst that conversation. And so I feel
damn right.
Yeah. So I always seen that Villeman was close and I was kind of handling him. I was faster than him. I was able to beat him in some of those off-season races. And so I was like, okay, this is it, like maybe I can do it. And everything aligned in 2003. And I was able to, kind of get a whole shot almost and run away with Anaheim 1. They don't tell you what comes after that, but because the first one's always the easiest. Like I can honestly say through my whole career, I don't know that there was an easier Supercross win than my first one. Everything after that seemed like it was an uphill battle. Like it was always much more difficult than the first one.
I don't know, dude. You had sitting on the bench in '04, you looked like there was you had a good time, and there was some relatively easy wins in '04. But that I always was curious of that. That was a great story, and like, yeah, without a doubt. And I tell people, and I don't even know if I've told you this, but yeah, you definitely not in a disrespectful way, but I just thought that you had growing to do, like you're going to go through the typical growing pains that a lot of rookies do. And I think going back, now that you said this, and I agree with you, I think your worldly experience really helped you and fast tracked that, that process that a lot of these young kids come up and go into the premier class that they struggle with, and I feel like, part of that again is your worldly experience, because you had been there, done that, you played the long game. And as you know, more than anyone in the premier class, that's half the battle, is playing the long game. It's not all about being piss and vinegar and being the fastest guy. So
No, it wasn't. And to your credit, I learned so much from you, because you held me at such a high level. Like my rookie season rivals any good rookie season, and any other era, I'm a champion in my rookie season.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, what, we had 16 races, I think, that year. Back then,
Yeah.
it was 16, and I finished 2 times off the podium, and both of those times off the podium, I was P6, and I won, and I lost the title to you at 7 points.
Yeah.
I mean, if I only give up 1 P6 to you and I finish second, I do the math and it's in my favor, right? And so I learned the hard way, and I was always appreciative of that. Like, I always, as much as it sucked to lose the title or whatever, but like now, like your intro, us being friends and not necessarily competitors, it's just like I'm always so proud of the era and the people that I got to race, because they taught me to be better as a rider, as a person, to deal with stuff, to get over it. I didn't always get over it quickly, but you had to get over it as quick as you could. And man, it's crazy that we're talking about 2003 and it's over 20 years.
It was, dude, it was, for me, I mean, and this is massive props to you, and thank you for the kind words, dude. I mean, you and I've, everyone tuned in, and that is either watching this on the audio vision or watching it or listening on the audio version, like Chad and I have had multiple conversations of the amount of respect that we have for each other and how we pushed each other and all that. And it just, I appreciate all the props, but like you are hands down probably the toughest competitor that I raced against. And before we get into the rest of the good stuff, we're going to roll out all the good right off here, off the top of the show. But I think that it just, you were so tough. You never gave up. You're one of the mentally toughest riders that I've ever faced, just because, I mean, the times that you didn't win, you always would come back. Or when we were in a close championship battle, you'd always come back. And I always tell people, like, dude, I always knew, like, if I gave you an inch, you were going to take a mile. And like, you were just so good at turning lemons into lemonades, and it would piss me off. But at the same time, you held me accountable, and you made me appreciate what I had accomplished and what I was able to do, because you were so tough. And I could tell how hard that you worked. And I told your dad this one time, like, dude, you raised a warrior. This guy never gives up. And you made me a better champion. I think that's why you and I have so much respect for each other, which leads me to, mate, you were inducted just last week into the Australian Motorsports Hall of Fame. I'm sure you're going to be in the Motorsports Hall of Fame, the AMA Motorsports Hall of Fame. Like, you're going to be in all of it, dude. You are one of the best, one of the greatest. Congratulations on that, mate. That's special.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. And again, you never set that like, there was never a goal of like, oh, I want to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, I didn't even know that I knew what the Hall of Fame was as a kid, like, it just, like, it's so funny that, like, emphasis are put on so many different things these days, maybe, and maybe just because the world's such a small place and we see everything in real time rather than in magazines and newspapers like we did when we grew up.
Yeah.
But and maybe that is it, just acknowledging that part. It's not a knock on the current, generation, but it was so different. I didn't look out to be like, wow, I just really want to be in the Hall of Fame. But I can honestly say that it makes me so beyond proud. Like when you look at the individuals that you stand in those spaces with, it's really special. It's really cool. And like my heroes growing up was Mick Doohan, and he's in there, and it's really cool and appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's great, man. It's well deserved, and your story is incredible. And hopefully, like I'm probably not. I don't know how many people know your full story, but I think that after today, that they will. You deserve it, mate. You're an incredible racer, incredible person, and you enjoy every single accolade that you have. United Motorsports moment of the week for sure. This week is having my mate Chad Reed on. Head over to United Motorsports. Go to unitedmotorsports.com or /title24.com, excuse me. Enter your email. You get a $15 credit towards your first order. Then you will automatically be entered each week to a $50 credit on your next order. So definitely excited to have you. There's some fans questions and some questions that I have too. Also, Reedy, on Title 24, we try to integrate a lot of the questions that we have each week from fans asking us stuff, whether it's me, RV, or battles that you and I have had, or whoever the hell it might be. But a lot of the times it's just current stuff on the championship and what's going on. So David Huff says, what was the hardest race that you can recall? The one that stands out for each of you. So, well, I'm gonna let you answer that first. We've had a load of tough races. Is there any one race that you and I battled that was that stands out to you right off the top of your head?
Ooh, I would say it's funny because we could probably answer each other's races, right?
I know.
I'm gonna go 2005 Atlanta Supercross. I had won, I believe, the week before in San Diego, come from way back, passed you on the last lap to win. And '05 was such a tough year because, like, it seemed like my strengths and weaknesses were flipped, and I was having to relearn a lot of things on the fly. Like it was my first year on aluminum frame, and wow, was that challenging. And so we were having to learn. Not only was I was amped up because the year before you got hurt, I was champion. And of course I wanted to validate that I was a worthy champion, And so you getting on the Suzuki, I had rode that bike and knew how much better it was. You had switched over to Bridgestone tires. And so basically a lot of the things that I felt like I had in my back pocket we were on even and equal playing field. And so that was a tough year. So I always felt that whenever there was traction, like you were just really good in the rut. I was good in ruts too, but like it just seemed like sometimes you were maybe just more down the road. You were older, you were a little more clever than I was at understanding how the track worked out. And in 2005, like my bike, when it was ready and I had traction, I was really good and better than I was in the past. But the old school steel frame Yamaha Bridgestones, like I was always so good on hardpack. And you being on the Honda and the Dunlops in those days, like I always felt like I had like a hand up on you. And that just completely was gone in '05. And anyway, long story short and again for the Atlanta. And so the people at home, it had kind of rained. I believe it was a wet San Diego, kind of off and on. It was kind of ruddy. It was a tough track. And then Atlanta the next weekend, and that year, I don't know why, but they had cut all the berms down. Like they had kind of, like typically we'd had big berms. Well, they'd kind of cut the berms and we had more flat turns.
Yeah.
And so literally I felt like I was racing with my hands tied behind my back sometimes. And you were just so good and so much better at me in that area. And that was such a flip of the coin for me. And so it was really hard. You handled me in Atlanta. Like I think I passed you and then
I
I
fell
don't know.
down.
I think you fell and
Remember?
I passed you. You got back up and passed me. And yeah, first turn, I just remember just soaring at the handlebars, trying to get the thing to turn in the first turn. And I think I actually want to say, embarrassingly, you passed me in the same spot twice. So
No, but
that would be my worst one.
hey, you know what though? Like whenever we would bust each other's chops for it, and I'd poke you a little bit, like this is after the fact. I was like, man, Atlanta, and then you one upped me though, dude. You got me at my home race in Atlanta or Daytona the next weekend, dude. I remember going into Daytona, coming off that race you're talking about in Atlanta, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. And midweek, like Ian Harrison's like, because we were looking for one little improvement on the engine, and we were assuming that you were making improvements also. Like, and so like Chad brings up a great point of he had switched from steel chassis to aluminum chassis, and I had understood that. And going into the 05 season, like I knew that leaving Yamaha or Honda, I had to be on something similar to Chad to even have a chance to beat him, because I knew that I couldn't be on, a 2-stroke Honda. There's this no shot. And if I had stayed at Honda, I was going to be on the 4-stroke. And I'm like, well, the Suzuki is basically a spitting image of the YZ. And so like, okay, well, I'll be good there. I like the steel chassis. He's going to be on an aluminum chassis. So let's see what happens there. And I remember, I'll never forget this, Chad, like, and this is before San Diego. It might have been Anaheim 3. And I could tell, like, one practice you wouldn't have a skid plate, and then the next practice you would have a skid plate on the bottom. And I remember talking to Goose, I'm like, they must be struggling with the aluminum chassis. Like, what was happening?
Well, I mean, the story behind the whole aluminum, right? It's kind of like as a rider, it's so confusing because, well, I'll back up. So like I got to do the transition, like, let's say like my 03, 04, and I think you agree, the Yamaha 252 stroke was one of the best, if not the best bike.
100%.
I think the only thing that rivaled it was your 05, Suzuki RM250, only because I rode it prior to you, doing it.
Did you? You rode
Yeah.
that thing?
Yep. So, so like I obviously, we kind of knew that you were going there, but I needed a little bit of leverage because you were leaving Honda and Honda wasn't going to go. And like, it seemed like Honda was, let's kind of not go into detail, but the detail behind some of their questionable decisions back then is, and I think that they got into a position where they're like, well, okay, we're not really going to play the game. So then I couldn't use that as leverage. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously I want a bigger contract. I didn't really have a desire to go anywhere, but I needed leverage. And so I rode the Suzuki and kind of had some interest there. And so I kind of had a first, and I'm glad I rode it because the 2-stroke engine on the Suzuki that year was probably a little better than my 04 bike. So the biggest improvement that we made was engine related. And so then anyway, we start testing. And of course, you get all these things like, hey, the bike's, it's on the weight limit. It's 216 pounds. This thing's, it's typical Japan. It's like same. It's like the same. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard it's like same?
Same. Almost same. Almost
same. And so we take my Vegas winning championship bike, 04 bike, and we do a back-to-back test. And right then and there at that day, I'm just like, oh my God, are we in trouble? I couldn't enter the whoops like I normally could. It was an uphill battle, and just like you, where we were trying, again, it would have been easy knowing what you know today. We would immediately just throw, back then we had 50 mil KYB forks, probably just go back to stock 48s. You kind of know all the fixes today, but back then we really didn't have it, right? Like, so you had to learn it on the fly. And sometimes like you'd be like, okay, yeah, like they get that test track real good and it's wintertime in California. You got some good traction, red clay at the Yamaha track. And yeah, we were kind of false. Yeah. Like thought, we had a bit of false hope, I think. And then we got to the racetrack, and Anaheim always, isn't it funny? Like still today, Anaheim has this thing of just really, like bringing you back to earth on where you are. Like sometimes when you think, oh, we're good, and then you get there and you're just like, we're not good. so so many times, and I've also entered where it's been good, but sometimes Anaheim has a real way of, bringing you back to the real world.
Reality. Yeah.
It's a good reality.
Hey, I wanted to share this story. Butterlegs asks, which race between you is the most memorable? Why is it San Diego 2005? Butterlegs, thanks for the question. I mean, we have so many, like Chad has described some great memories, like 2005, and Chad was the man at a lot of races. But especially like, it'd be like me going to Atlanta, like there was the same, I felt like Chad had those same feels going into San Diego each year. And like 2005, I look back and I always wonder, like, did you have races? We always look back and like, did you have races, ones that got away? And I look at that one as, okay, this is your place. Before I leave this, this career, I want to try to get him at San Diego. And 2005 was my best shot. And I wanted to ask you this part. I mean, and you're probably, I think I know what you're going to say, but I can't wait to hear what you had to say. Was there ever a point, because I know for me, like around lap 10 or 12, I'm like, and I knew where you were at and I felt good. I'm like, all right, like, I'm holding my own here. I'm like, I thought by like lap 12, 13, I'm like, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do it. And so that was it for me. I was completely wrong. Typical Chad Reed style. You never, ever gave up. And yeah, you passed me on the last lap. I had my plan of what I was going to do. I think I've told you I was just going to send it through the whoops. And I was going to try to sky that single. What was it? A tight hairpin 180. I was just going to try to nudge you out of the way and hit that inside rut. Cause of course you were going to block, you were going to guard the inside and go to the inside. I'm like, well, if I can just like push him out the rut, I'll be good. And then get to the finish line. And I ran out of talent there towards the end. But so for me, that, like, when I think of all of our battles, I'm like, damn, because most of the time you just straight up kick my tail, but that one, I'm like, I let that one get away for numerous reasons. But at the same time, not to take anything away from you, Mike, I was pissed at myself for that because I could have done better. Was there ever a moment in that race where you thought, like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to pull it off?
I mean,
Or no?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't think I was gonna get there, but I knew, like, I had. You know how it is, like when you're gauging, there was just enough hope. There was more hope on the table than not.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just kept digging, and I held, like, we were deep. Like, I don't know if you remember, but like I crossed the finish line, like literally right behind Mike LaRocca, who was P3. Like, one more lap, we would have lapped the whole entire field. So, and I've watched that race back on video, because it's a highlight for most people. And the whoops were really challenging. They had that one set after the finish line, if you remember, they were huge. And then the lappers, like, as the track started to deteriorate, the lappers just seemed like they were playing a bigger part. And that was kind of really the meat on the end of the bone for me, was just keep digging, keep going, stay on top of the whoops, hit my marks. And I was taking just enough out of your lead to keep hope.
Yeah.
But to think that I was like, 2 laps to go, I didn't think I was going to get there. But as, each lapper was a better rider. Like P4, like when you're going into lapping P5, 6, like 4th place, those are good dudes, and back then. So anyway, I didn't feel threatened on the last lap, other than, if anyone recalls the race, but I don't know if Villeman was P4 that night, but we had lapped him right before the whoops where you crashed, and I had caught myself on his outside. And so he kind of almost ran me wide. And so I had to And so I had to take instead of kind of doing my normal cut down and getting a good run through the whoops, I had to kind of ride the berm all the way across the top. And at that point, I just had to send the whoops as much as I could. And once I got a decent drive in the whoops, I kind of was like, okay, even his best run through the whoops is going to equal a decent run for me. and then I knew that I could handle, block the inside, like you said. So we kind of had opposing, counter, your attack,
Strategy.
your attack, my counter attack. But San Diego was a fun race, but I'm gonna say that Daytona, for me personally, was my favorite and probably the one trophy that you take to the grave, just because you were so gnarly and so badass there, and and you were always known for being good and strong and just so good there. And I took such a beating the week before that I just was like, Daytona, like and it wasn't even that I beat you. It was that the two of us, like, I felt like outside of your crash, we were just laying down laps. And like it's all time. Like, for me, it's one of the greatest races ever of just, and again, you had a helmet cam on that night. I remember, Rick Johnson in the booth, and he just says, like, I think it might've been even RJ and DB. I'm not 100% sure, but like, they just like, we're not even going to talk, just listen. And it's like old school, your bike, my bike, like you said, they were so equal, same engine, same cylinder, essentially. And we had such, like, that was the pinnacle of two-stroke 250 racing.
Yeah.
And I could watch that, on board camera all day long. And how you rode behind, and then how I did my thing, but I wasn't blocking, but I was not leaving an inch for you to get in there. Pretty fun one.
You, I mean, you were so incredible that day, and like following you, I can't remember. I mean, did I even make it halfway before I fell down? I can't remember.
I think it was just after half. Like, I want to say you crashed around 10, 12.
Okay.
But I had started to.
Yeah,
like,
you weren't. I wasn't gonna beat you that night. At the beginning of the race, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay close, right? And it was hard for me to stay close, and I had to take more chances than I really wanted to. So, like, okay, automatically you already had me on the ropes. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not fast enough to pass him. So I'm just gonna my strategy. If I'm not fast enough to pass you, I'll just follow you, and then hopefully you'll get tired and I'll get you like later on in the race. And I'm like, that was, your pace was too hard for me to handle. So you had me going into the red zone, and then and essentially that's why I wrecked. I was riding over my limit. I wasn't as fast as you, and I tried too hard, and I crashed. And because you were on another level that night. So I mean, dude, I had nothing for you. You straight up, you took it to me that night, and I wouldn't have beat you, because like you said, it was just like I couldn't keep up, and even if it was a bike length a lap, you just had me on the ropes from the get-go. And I'll never forget this one area, Reedy, is like right after the finish line, and it like turned left, and it had a hard right-hand corner, and we popped back and jumped back up over the first corner there. And I just remember is that what we were doing? Yeah. And
we were tripling. It kind of went into like a hole, I think. And all I remember is the ruts were getting so gnarly. And it's like, and at that point, I had learned so much from you. I felt like I was kind of a veteran. We were equal in that mindset. Like, I always felt what made it hard about beating you was the mindset of the war. Winning the war was always so big. Yeah. And so you couldn't get each other off balance for one weekend. Like, we always saw the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I just remember, like, you know what? I'm going to take risks. And I'm just like, I was scraping like pegs off of this thing every lap. And I'm just like, I'm just going for it.
Yeah. Dude, I remember like that area, and you're saying you were taking risks, and it was paying off for you. And I'm like, dude, I can't hit this freaking corner right. Like, what's going on? And, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, he's going to win tonight. This is the toughest part of the track, and I should be good through here, because like you said, growing up in these kind of conditions, ruts and all that, like, I felt like my bike setup in those conditions were better than yours, straight up. Just like softer, more compliant, whatever. And like, I couldn't, in an area that I should have been making up time, I couldn't. And I can remember it, dude, like it was right now. I'm like, nope. I said, he's got me tonight. He has got me tonight. And I'm just going to try to hang in, and hopefully he makes a mistake. If not, he's got me. And I could tell you weren't going to make a mistake, dude. You weren't like, you were hitting your marks perfectly. You weren't making, from what I could tell, you weren't making that many mistakes. I mean, you know when you got somebody, on the verge. And dude, that was awesome. Like I'm pumped. I'm pumped you got it. I'm pumped that you got it. You deserved that win more than anybody. And I had nothing for you. And it was, and I just look at those battles. And I'll say it here. And I don't know if I've told a lot of people this. I think racing you from an all around package, because I don't know that I necessarily caught MC at a time when he was at his prime and when I was at my prime. It's just like everyone always would make a big deal about me and Everts, but dude, like he's quite a bit older than me, so I never got to race him when I was in my prime, and same for him. He was still great. I was still good at the time, but it wasn't like you and we were much closer. And I think from a championship perspective, you were the toughest guy to beat, just because you had great speed. You were mentally tough. You were smart with your motorcycle and how to set it up. You knew what changes that you need to make. And you just, like all areas of your game was just buttoned up, dude. Straight up. Gnarly.
Yeah. And I mean, you had to be. I feel like that was.
You had to. Because, dude, you were at least going to get second. You could start dead last, and you're like, well, he's at least going to get second. So we had no expense to spare, dude. Right?
No, I agree. And second was such a horrible night, right? Like that's probably the thing that I sit here today as a retired guy, like, and I see, like, I went and seen Cooper Webb after Daytona's loss this year. And you could see how mad he was. And I'm just like, I looked at him, and it was just like that looking in the mirror moment of like, oh my God, I spent so many weekends and years of my life being so mad but yet one day those seconds are pretty damn nice, right?
Yeah, they are, dude. I got a crap load of second places to you, like especially in 2003. Honestly, if it wasn't for, I would call like your rookie, I wouldn't even call them mistakes, just learning in 2003, you'd have beat me for the championship for sure. You were just that much better from Daytona on. Like dude, I would go to the races and I knew I wasn't going to win. Like, I'm like, okay, well, if the whoops are manageable, they're jumpers, I have a legit shot. But if they were remotely, like, if you had to blitz them, like, nope, I said, I'm not winning tonight. So my only goal was to get second. Did you ever know that? Like, I knew I wasn't going to win.
That you do the math and it was fine, right? And it was like,
yeah, that's all I was doing. That's all I was doing.
Because like that was when like you started to have to, like, you had to play the game, right? And it's like the game wasn't adding up in my favor. Like I was like, I'm like, this guy can get seconds, all the way out. And so then it was kind of challenging. It was like a weird time because like, no, and even P3 was your teammate at the time. And it's like, if need be, I always knew that Ernie wasn't, and not only was your teammate, he was your good friend. Yeah. And so I just was like, and again, I was good friends with Ernie too, but Honda was paying his bills. I think he was going to side with you all day long. Yeah. And so you just kind of felt that I just gotta win. But you got to start playing the game. And, I started playing where you try to mess with you a little bit and things like that. But just, yeah, man, it's good times.
Dude, we could sit here freaking. So when we were when I was talking to our producer, like, hey, this is what I want to talk to Reedy about, blah blah blah, because I have some questions that I don't know about that I'm curious, and but at the same time, I know people are going to want to hear his reaction to what's been going on this season, and so let's switch gears. The Boxo tools, Boxo breakdown, dude. Do you have a Boxo deal?
No Boxo deal,
dude.
Just
well,
like
come on,
just like
JH
old
is
times, he was all the budget.
JH is co-producer of Title 24, mate. What like have him hook you up, man? We'll get you dialed.
My
Boxo breakdown.
my percentage to GH is not enough.
No, he likes you. He likes you. Everyone should. So Boxo breakdown this week. Check out boxousa.com and enter the promo code Title 24, 10% off anything site wide. Let's talk about SMX this year. Where do you like has there been any surprises for you outside of injuries? I mean, we can sit here and talk about that all day, but like what's the biggest thing that you've taken away this year so far? Surprises.
Surprises would be, of course, the injuries,
Yeah.
but then some of the injuries I'm not necessarily surprised about, just because I know enough to see what's happening, and I think that life is always bigger than athletics, and sometimes the decisions and things you do in life are always going to be your shortcomings. I'm surprised to see the Supercross champ struggle as much as he did with the new bike, because it seemed like as soon as Hunter got on that bike seemed like it was a big improvement to his motocross championship. And then, Jett was able to get the SMX World Championship wrapped up. Yep. And so it kind of seemed like all things were flowing, in the right way. And I didn't necessarily think that anyone could beat him on a skill to skill. So his struggles there somewhat surprised me. What else? I think Eli is probably the biggest bummer, just because and I think that you could relate to this, like when your time's coming to an end, sometimes it's really hard because you want to win so bad because it's going away, that win outweighs and sometimes maybe becomes too big of an outlook or whatever. But it always seemed that, and again, I just sit in the stands and I watch, but like any pass he made, the crowd went crazy. Every lap led in San Diego, I happened to be there. Like the crowd was going nuts, and I can relate to later years in my career where the crowd was wanting you and you were one of the favorites to win, and they were so pumped on you, and then your desire is so high to win, and sometimes it seems like a bummer in my opinion, to see him go out. I hope this is not the last year that we see him. I do hope that he comes back to the level that he was at this year. What else? I think Chase, I think that you always, personally speaking, off camera.
Yep.
Like I always say that, like for me personally, like you're always really hard on him and you hold him to a high level. And sometimes I wish that you would hold other people to that level too. And maybe they're not at that level, but I just think that it should be equal. And he's just made decisions and mistakes that, a guy of his caliber should not make. And so I think that, I kind of agree with you on a lot of those decisions, like he should, I want to be careful with what I say, because I'm also a big Cooper Webb fan and believer. He wins races in a lot of ways how I was able to win races. I think sometimes I look in the mirror and Coop and I could be very much the same person, how we think, how we win, how we never give up. You always find yourself, you don't just find yourself in a position to win. That's by design. Like you don't give up. You work hard. You tick all the boxes. The 3 practices that we do every weekend, you don't need to always be the fastest guy, although you like to be, but you also acknowledge that you don't need to be. When the lights go out, we do opening ceremonies and they drop the gates in thing. That's a whole new Cooper Webb. And I can relate to that feeling because that was a strong point of mine. But yeah, like so I would say that it's been a fun year, an interesting year to watch individually how they've all, come along. I expected more from Justin Barcia. I really thought that
I did too.
a guy the reason why I expected more was because I think as a skill level, I think he's a good rider. Um, I don't love his racing ethics always, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I really respect his skill, and he's a great rider, and he rides old school in the way that he can get a lot out of the racetrack. He's good in the whoops. He's kind of like he's good everywhere. And I really thought that somebody in his, what is he now, 31,
Yeah.
30?
Yeah.
Somebody in your 30s and you make that choice of making a big call and you go to work with Alden. I just thought I expected more, I guess. Yeah, I'm surprised that he's. And again,
I,
I don't know anything behind the doors. I don't know if he's had an injury. I don't know if he's been beat up. I do know that having a second child is not always easy, and maybe there's something to that. But yeah, I expected more from
yeah.
Barcia.
I did too, for that exact reason. Like, he's got good skill, he's got good speed, and again, like, yeah, I mean, sometimes his racing ethics has been questionable. I think he's definitely gotten better, especially since he's had a kid, and he's even alluded to that fact for sure. And your observation is freaking on point. But I thought, like, that being there, because everybody, I mean, Chad, I think you're probably the only dude, one of the only dudes outside of the Lawrences that haven't worked with Eldon in a roundabout way, or maybe you did behind the scenes, and like, no one knows. But I like, you just, like, there's always this perception, like, if you go there to his facility, you're automatically going to get better, and it's not always the case, like, so.
Question
But I
for
did
you on
think,
this subject. I have a question on this subject.
yeah.
You've worked with Alden, right? I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really believe that we got the level that we were because you were a student of the game.
Yeah.
And you watched, you took every information on,
I listened a lot.
listened a lot. Everybody wants to give you their opinion, and you take it on, and you take some of the good in, you just let go of whatever you don't want to be a part of. And I just see the mentality has changed a lot. And I don't know that I love it. And I think that sometimes when I still see Eli Tomac riding around at his level that he was at before he got hurt, he still is doing what we used to do, kind of locking yourself away from people, not always at the test track, not always around the race team. um, and it's like, I never heard him complain that his intensity was down because he wasn't riding with the teammates, or, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
100%. You're
changed a
100%.
lot.
You're 100% right. And up until, I would say, the last couple years, and I would even, like, from a championship perspective, not, this is champions only. Okay, Eli Tomac didn't grow up in a facility. You didn't grow up in a facility. I didn't grow up in a facility. And I know things are different, right, nowadays. So now champions that are, work hard enough to win a championship, they're probably going to have come through, a facility type situation. And I'm all for facilities. If you have, if you don't have the means to have your own place, I think they're a great place to go ride. I think you can learn off others. So I'm not, like, I'm for it. I think it's better for the sport in certain ways. But a lot of the guys still are guys that did it your way, my way, like, on their own. You're exactly right. Like Eli, he lives in Colorado. He does his own thing, and the guy has won a crap load of championships. Ken
And
Roxon,
even
another great guy. He didn't grow up in a facility. It just,
100%.
I think there is something there, especially when you get to our level. But at the end of the day, like, kids your age, your kids' age, at what stage is it a distraction, of that you end up racing someone every single day of the week at the facility and not focusing on what you need to focus on? And I think too, like, you didn't need anyone to motivate you during the week. You raced your stopwatch. You knew exactly where you needed to be better based on, where maybe I was better, or Stu was better, or RV was better, whoever you were racing that season for a championship. You knew where you needed to be better. And I was the same way, dude. I used to have a Chad Reed Ghost or James Stewart Ghost or MC Ghost in front of me, and I would chase that person and try to think of, okay, well, he would be here, or you were so good in a lot of the areas of the track, Reedy, but especially like the berms. That's one area where I knew I could get better outside of the whoops. I'm like, let's work on this first, because this will be easier to improve on. How do I go around this berm faster? So I would try to mimic what you would do as there was a ghost in front of me. And I think that's what makes people really great and multi-time champions is
So
I think.
quick comment, and everything you just said, couldn't have said it better myself, because there's this ghost that lives within your head, right? And you're chasing ghosts. And I think, how do I say it real quickly? But like, it's that ghost that should motivate you. And it's my opinion only, that I believe that some of these, and agree with you on the facility, that it's not that they're bad, but riding with your teammates and the volume of teammates that there is these days, I believe that Monday through Friday should always be hard. Like, that should be where the work's done. You control that work, control that environment. And what I believe that I see is that people are punch drunk. Like, the pace that they do is always so high, and it's sometimes easy. Like, showing up the track on Tuesday with your friends, talking crap in between motos, like, it's fun. And I'm like, yes, it needs to be fun, but sometimes it's not always fun.
I know.
and I just think that there's that ghost. And I think when I watch the high volume of mistakes that get made today, sometimes I believe because they're always just so switched on, because there's so many people that they're riding with during the week. And then when they're leading a race on the weekend, it's a whole nother like ghost in their head that they don't get to experience. And I feel like I experienced that Monday through Friday for my whole career. And anyway, that's just my opinion on it. And it's not that it's good or bad. It's just something that's changed. And it's an area that I see that Eli still has an edge on people. And I really believe it's because of that reason.
I think too, like going back to the facilities, and I think they're great. I think it's a place for everyone. I have a lot of respect for what these people that own the facilities do. I think what you're saying, like, and you focus on what you're doing, and you have that ghost that you're chasing, you can still do that if you're at one of these facilities. Just focus on yourself and the guy that you are racing with and the person that you are trying to beat, and just block out the outside noise of the other riders and stuff there. And so anyhow, so all right, switching gears, the Dunlop debate. So Reedy, each weekend we do a two more questions for you. We do a Motorsports and NBC's YouTube community poll, and we ask the fans, like, hey, what did they take away from the weekend, or what happened? This weekend happens to be the Motorsports and NBC's YouTube community poll. Who finishes the season with the most wins? Is it Cooper Webb, Chase Sexton, Ken Roczen, or other? And people can go on there. You can see on the screen. I haven't picked yet, but I think with the most wins. So what? I'm going to go Sexton. I think he exits the series with the most wins. I lost. So it must not me. Who would you say other, or who do you got out of the three?
Well, it's tough, right? Because we got 8 races to go.
Yeah.
And
they're all outdoor, by the way.
And like, when you think, again, I agree with you on that. Like, dude, we're gonna go to PA, and the northern ones, even to
East
Seattle,
Rutherford, Seattle.
Seattle. We could realistically have mudders all the way out. It could be that simple. I hope not for us fans, but here's what I was going to say is, like, like, as a racer, you're like, oh, it's 8 races, but like 8 races is a lot still. Like, that's a lot of racing. And so I'm interested to see, as a fan, what did the weekend off bring for Chase Sexton? Does he go back to basics? Does he have the people around him in my opinion, that's probably the biggest question. Does Chase Sexton have the correct information around him to change and get back to the basics of winning races and looking at the winning the wall, not so much the battle, because I agree with you a few weeks ago with his comments on he just wanted to win when he was already in a position like when you're old and retired like me and you on a podcast.
Yeah.
The record book shows that you won. It didn't matter if you didn't win a race. The record book shows that you are number one that night, and no one will care or nobody will ask, did he win any of the 3 motos or was he just consistent? And that's where I think that I hope that Chase has learned his lesson quickly. Same. Because if he does that and he gets back into those where he finds that rhythm and finds that, it's going to be really hard for those boys to take on Chase Sexton at Chase Sexton's best. Yep. And
I think that's the hard part for me. Reedy is like, and like again, I hold him to a high standard, and I hold Coop to a high standard, just like I hold Eli to a high standard. It doesn't seem like that at times because those guys are normally doing the stuff that we expect them to do outside of just getting beat. Like if it's just raw speed, I'm not super critical of that, but it's like when it's uncharacteristic mistakes, you're just like, dude, he's better than that. Like you would have been pissed at yourself if you did that. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like when I'm on the TV, and I know I'm never going to get it right. I'm not trying to sit here and claim that I'm perfect, but I'm doing the best to be like, that guy is the level of Reedy and Stu and MC. Like they shouldn't do that.
So here's what I'll add to that is that I think that I agree with you that Chase's ability to go fast and win races is here. Coop is a little older, a little more mature, and doesn't have that flashiness, so he's kind of like, you always kind of put him down here a little bit, maybe just one step below. But I will add that the Cooper Webb that I saw in Indianapolis, they should be scared of him because his starts were on point, his speed was on point, and going back to my comment of like kind of feeling like I can relate to a lot of and how Cooper wins, that confidence that you're giving Cooper Webb right now is really dangerous because now he believes he has the best bike. You gotta believe that you don't think that Cooper Webb has a chip on his shoulder and he wants his old team that he left to beat him and his replacement to beat him. Like if there's one, and not even anything to do with Chase Sexton, but if there's one rider or one bike on the pit and team that Cooper Webb wants to beat, it is that orange one, right? So, and he knows the good, the bad, the ugly about the team. He's old mechanic through all those successes is the crew chief, the team manager, Ian, Roger. Like he knows the ins and outs of that team. He knows that bike mostly. And so I think that you're giving a lot of boxes ticked to Cooper Webb at a period that you don't want to do that.
Honestly, moving forward, until we get to the quad lock question of the week, Reedy, to your point, I feel like, and we talked about it already, dude, there's 8 races to go. There's no more closed stadiums. I think the most, in my opinion, you tell me if I'm wrong, the biggest challenge other than staying healthy that Cooper Webb faces is inclement weather. I think that's what I think.
That and just you have to do. You only can control what you can control, and right. Cooper Webb has to show up the best Cooper Webb version, like he did in Indianapolis, and just tackle every weekend for the next 8. Easier said than done.
Yeah,
tackle the next 8 weeks like you did, or at least because crossing over here, if you tackle the next 4 weeks like you did Indianapolis. And it goes in his favor for the next 4, then he has control. Then he has the ability to then play the system and play the game, right? So we'll see. I think that's what makes it fun for you as an analyst, for me as a fan on the couch. It's going to be fun to watch.
Quad Lock question of the week. I love this. I love this section. Quad Lock brand, Aussie brand, make fantastic stuff. Great product. Check them out. Quad Lock, quadlockcase.com. Winner of this week, Ninfoto_media. And I love this for you, Reedy, because you are a massive supporter of the combine. You give incredible insight, and I think you do so good. You do so well at this. Ninfoto_media asks, riders have trainers, coaches, and mechanics. Why does no one have a mental coach? Go take it away. It's your stage, brother. You've been killing it today.
Oof. I think that mental coaches are a personal choice. I don't know that I'm for them or against them. I will say that they can be equally as bad as they can good. And I think that they're equal to a mechanic, to a trainer, or to a coach. The right mental coach in whatever it is that you believe, without giving my opinion too much, I don't know that I never personally had one. I didn't need it. I lean on the side of that they're more bad than good, because in my opinion, there's mental coaches, and without going into my real belief of where I think is where it is, but like mental coaches want to tell you what you do and what you don't do and all those things. I don't believe that that's healthy.
Or they tell you how to think.
And tell you how to think. Exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth. And so I don't know that. I think that people should put more effort, and I'll put this as a question to you.
Okay.
Did you hire Alden Baker to help you with your writing ever?
No, never. And in fact, that's a great no. I controlled what I did on my riding, and this was his silo over here. You are my off-track trainer. We're going to cycling, gym, and diet. That's your silo. I don't need you to tell me how to ride.
Yeah.
We got that part. That's what Johnny O's and the team managers, my mentors.
Your mom.
Yeah,
Your
my
mom.
mom.
And I agree with you on that. Is that coaches or trainers should be put in the trainer box and the trainer box only, because there's sometimes I wish that no information is better than bad information, and I just think that there's so many coaches that I don't think deserve the space to give the information that they're giving. But I really believe that these riders that are listening, if any of them, go find a coach, trainer. Sorry, go find a trainer that is going to make you the best, athlete off of the bike. That obviously has to correlate over to your riding. So it's not like you just want to go be a gym junkie, because you still want to be a good motorcycle rider. And that's what I don't know. When I did that in the later part of my career, and I started working with Peter Park, who now works with Chase, I hired him single-handedly because I really believed, of all the people that I researched, that he was going to be great for me athletically. And I didn't like information, if I'm honest, on how to ride, or I lived the part of where we started. You missed this part where we started transitioning into the fuel injection, and then the fuel injection brought electronics. So then the team could then see your RPM, your shift points, doing all these things. And they all suddenly started to want to tell you that how to ride the dirt bike. Oh, you're holding this gear here, or oh, you're not going fourth through the whoops. Well, bro, you shift fourth through the whoops and tell me that you're good. Don't tell me how to ride the motorcycle. What I mean? I get it that they want to help, but sometimes the motorcycle data, not cars, not street related things, but dirt data is so different than
it's not as accurate as pavement.
It's not. It's really not. And I really believe that we live in an era of all these people seeing things on the data, and they're trying to suddenly they're becoming like rider coaches and telling them that they got a shift there and a shift there. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's a little bit
It's
too
a
much.
tool. Dude, it should be used as a tool, not the end all be all. Like, hey,
100%.
where should this help me? Can I apply it to what it's telling me, the data is telling me, to where I need to be better? And like you said it, like when you're on pavement, data is because most of the time it's full grip, so it's more accurate. Where dirt is just, it's not as accurate. Again, it's a nice tool, it's good to have, but it shouldn't be the end all be all answer, and you live and die by the data. That's what I think.
I always believe that the rider is the customer and the customer is never wrong.
Yeah, and
For
and
good or
another
bad.
thing, too, Reedy, is like, and so yeah, we're done with this, but it's like another thing. You and I, we got to grow up in an area where we grew up on 2-strokes, we grew up on steel chassis, we grew up on 4-strokes, on aluminum chassis, 2-stroke aluminum chassis, carburation, not fuel injection. Yeah, I never got to race professionally with fuel injection. I think I would have enjoyed it. And like, listen, dude, I set my bikes up completely an unorthodox way, but that didn't mean that I didn't know how things worked. With the wheel slid forward, with the wheel slid back, what do these pull rods do? What does this linkage do? What do these offsets do? What does this steering angle do? What do these diameter forks do? What does this material do? I set my bike up that made me feel comfortable. And I feel like, and this is where you are so good, is like, I think that there needs to be an area where the guys know how to set up their bikes a little bit better. I tiptoed around it on Gypsy, and it was just kind of fun. But I feel like some of your success, some of my success, compared to some of our other competitors, I know for a fact that I won races and you won races based on our knowledge for the motorcycle rather than our straight up ability on certain nights, I feel like.
So and for the fans, I think this is a fun one for me.
Yeah.
Is the first time that you and I ever encountered each other in a way that we weren't competitors was when I went to Suzuki.
Yeah.
You were an ambassador for Suzuki. You actually came down to Florida.
Yep.
And so it was a really fun experience for me because it was the first time, not that you were, I don't want to say relevant, but it wasn't like they handed me your bike, right? Like it wasn't like you retired and I rode your bike the next year. There was a gap and a fuel injection had come along. And so when I started getting on the bike, Roger, Ian, Goose in particular, it was really interesting and rewarding that they were like, wow, like it's crazy how your ability to understand the chassis, clamp offset, different thickness, it's endless. And it's like you said, the fork diameter, the fork lugs, the triple clamps, not, like back then Suzuki had, 120 offset clamp and it came in 3 or 4 different versions. I miss those days because we would always run through it. And I think, listen to you right now, you could almost tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could pretty much tell me everything that you ever tried at Honda, Suzuki, like literally, like we could have stories for a whole year of just talking about it. Like I remember everything that I tried in my professional career and what it did, and you log it. And I don't believe that gets done enough today. It doesn't matter, like you and I, from my understanding from listening to Goose, chassis, you and I were identical. Yeah. We always chose, your clamp preference was always my clamp preference. The chassis,
rigidity and flexion of it,
and feel, you and I picked the same. Yeah. As far as suspension, we were polar opposite. Back then you were 51s. I went there. The bike started to get more rigid, and so we started back up to the 49s. You liked it soft, I liked it stiff. But then what people didn't understand is you're small, you don't have the leverage front to back, so you could have it and get away with it soft. I'm taller, not tall, but taller than you, short guy. Just a little dig while I can.
I love it. I love it.
I had leverage where you didn't have it, meaning like if I had your forks, like they would just be so soft for me when I leant on them. The shock would be so soft when I leant backwards, and so I had to have my stuff hold up a little more. Yeah, I know you don't bounce around because you're an ambassador of somebody else, but
No.
mate, if you rode production bikes, and maybe you have, and you won't be able to comment on, I don't expect that, but like production bikes, like sometimes I don't understand what path we're on. Like I feel like they're running truck rear springs, truck semi rear linkage ratios. Like it's just crazy. Like when you watch on TV and you don't see these guys and they're not very good in the whoops, I don't know that I believe that they're not good in the whoops, that just the bikes, like they're just, it's weird.
Well, I mean, Reedy,
it's
like, I
changed.
mean, from a production standpoint, I think from the base, and I can only speak on this behalf because I was part of this involvement and still am to this day with Triumph, like at a baseline. It was myself and Ivan Tedesco, and we tested that thing, and like, and we still tested it the way that you're explaining, of going through things, running through the gamut on everything, dude, whether it's square corners, beveled corners, it doesn't matter, right? Like thicknesses, materials, whether it's, aluminum swing arm pivots, whether it's steel swing arm pivots, whether it's tie or what size, right? Diameter, what size diameter axles, do we want, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I just think that I think that you're right. And I think that the further and the more we rely on data, and the further we get down the road of our day, like it's just a generational thing of how things are changed. And yeah, I haven't ridden I don't ride production bikes that much anymore, other than my Triumph. But for me, I'm still thinking along the lines of there has to be a balance there, right?
Yes.
There's some good stuff in the new technology, but I still think there's something to be said for that human feel and element, and how it can still be better than data. That's what I think. All right, dude. Congratulations to Ninfo_media. I know we kind of went off. So you know what to do. Slide in this DM. JH will get you set up with Quad Lock, and you get all kinds of fun stuff. Dude, we could have gone on forever. I told you, I'm like, yeah, it'd only be like 45, 50 minutes. And here we are at like a minute and 15. I appreciate it, dude.
Hey, thank you. Always good time. And
yeah,
like you said, I mean, it's always fun because, like, in a weird way, there's very few people that can relate to everything that you have experienced. And it's always nice to hear, a lot of our stories and behind the scenes and how we think as racers and past racers. So it's, yeah, sometimes you think you're crazy. Like I always think, man, like, did I just do it wrong? And it's, you justify my thinking. So I'm good with that. Either you're crazy or I'm crazy, or we're both crazy.
No, you know what? You know what's crazy, Reedy, is that a lot of times, like multi-champion like yourself and me, and whether it's MC and RV and RD, like they're like, overall, there's so many similarities. And like, because sometimes people, on this podcast are like, oh, you and RV, there's not enough, like, you guys don't go against each other as much. There's like, and I'm like, well, it's because we think a lot alike, just like you and I think a lot alike. It's just like, so we're not going to disagree as much as some people would want. And I think this is what I hope that people really enjoy, like about our podcast today that we did, is like, man, just what you said, there's a lot of similarities in how we think and what our approach is and what that end goal is. And that's just not by happenstance of why you were so successful or why other guys were so successful. It's because of that mindset, I believe, and it's similar.
Yeah, no, it is. Like, and I would agree with you that RV is, very much aligned with how we, did it. And then he did it different. He came along a little later, and It's
What
funny
was
because
it like? I mean, you raced me, you raced him. What was it like, real quick?
He-
Like racing him versus me or Stu?
so if there was anyone to come in and replicate you, I really believe that RV was really similar to you. He was always so strong, had little flaws, like he how would you say it? Like I was teammates with him, and so I got to know him a little bit that year as a teammate, and that was his first year, and so I really took a lot of that information on because I was like, he's going to be the next guy at some point, and so take this information on, understand this guy, and he was just young and cocky, and I love that. Like that's what you relate to, and I think that he was one strong like you, didn't have weakness on a fitness level. His corner speed really good. And I think he was just a modern version of like he learned the generations, right? Like from you, James, myself, like he had gotten better at some of the things. And so I think that he probably built his arsenal up a little bigger, like he was really good in the whoops. And he was like, he had a unique bike setup, like a bike that really wasn't, let's call it like normal. Like, I wouldn't say normal, but like different, like and what worked for him worked for him. Like when we started transitioning over to Air Forks, I remember, oh, this is the RV setup. Like this is what RV found. And I'd be just like, bro, like I can't.
This thing sucks.
Like this thing's horrible. And I'm like, this can't be his setting. But yet it worked for him. And I think that that's where I like that you two, and again, we all did it in our own ways, but you knew what worked for you, and it didn't matter if it was right or wrong, or the team or someone else, your teammate didn't align with you, dude. You're going down the path that works for you, and I love that about him. And again, he's a bad dude.
All right. Cool, dude. Again, I appreciate you. Brother. Get back. I know the kids are out there motoing. Good luck at areas, right? You did the region. No.
Yeah. Areas. We got areas. So we got area qualifiers, then obviously regionals, and then hopefully Loretta's. So Kaya's already done her area, and she's qualified to the regional. You'll like this. You ready? You want to be a coach or a trainer? I might race Loretta Lynn's. I got this crazy thought that maybe I'll race it. So I'm going to race an area, which I've done for the last 2 years, and then I just never raced the regional. So anyway, I'm 3 years straight. Maybe
only advice I want to give. Only advice I want to give you.
Okay, I'm interested.
If it has, don't race a 25 plus pro or whatever it is, dude. Take your age advantage and race whatever the oldest age class you can, because those dudes are gnarly and they ride and they race all the time. And as you're learning, amateur tracks race different than what you and I raced.
That's the one reason why I haven't followed through with racing Loretta's, is because the amateur races are really hard for me to learn. It's like you have to be really comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like there's just bumps on bumps. Like as pro racers, and as long as like 20 plus years, like I haven't really rode a track that wasn't pro in 20 years. And so like there's bumps where there's supposed to be bumps, and the track flows inside, outside. And it's just like I'm taking lines that I don't even know that are there. And who's really good at it is Brownie. Wow. Like I really believe that Mike Brown, as a racing on amateur tracks, have we raced on tracks like that as pros, God help all of us, because he's gnarly at those tracks. So anyway, I only have the luxury of I could do pro sport, like you said, which just makes no sense. I don't think we should be allowed to do that race, actually. And then I have to do either plus 25, and then I can do the plus 40.
No, do the plus. Well, I'm just my best advice I could give to you, my friend.
Track time. Everyone else rides 2 classes. I'm gonna need some track time. I've never been to Loretta's. Like never rode the track. Like I've obviously been there and walked it, but I've never rode it.
Damn.
Isn't that funny?
Just don't do the 25, please. Just don't do it, because I know like you do have good. You have mental you have that gift of knowing when to pull back and when not. And like, I know you have the mental discipline to not just want to send it, but just don't race those guys. They're younger than they are. Hey, speaking of, before I let you go, so dude, this is the hardest part of this podcast for me and everyone listening or watching Title 24 is like trying to be like a co-host is tough. So Aaron, throw up the Super Motocross on NBC this week. Let me hit this promo. Here you go, guys. Thursday, like you guys know, SMX Insiders with Weege and JT at 3 p.m. on YouTube. That is every Thursday, so check them out. And then Saturday, Race Day Live with JB, Justin Brayton, and Adam Cianciarillo. That starts at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and that is that'll be on Peacock. They have a new podcast, actually, that starts this week. Comes out tomorrow. Round 10 of Monster Energy Supercross, Birmingham, 7 p.m. Eastern. That'll be on Peacock. And then Monday, an encore presentation at 1 a.m. So graveyard shift. If you guys are up at 1 a.m. Monday morning Eastern time, there'll be an encore Birmingham on CNBC. Check that out. Thank our great partners, United Motorsports, Quad Lock, Boxo, and Dunlop. And then my mate Chad Reed for coming on. It was special. We hope that you guys enjoyed his stories for sure. He's one of the best to ever do it. He's got the he's got the titles to prove it, the wins to prove it, and just a great ambassador for the sport. You guys know where to watch us. We're on Motorsports and NBC's YouTube page. We're also on Peacock on demand, so you can watch this on Peacock if you want, or you can go to old episodes of Title 24. And then last but not least, if you only want to listen to the audio version, we're on all the podcast platforms. So there you go, Reedy. That's the hardest job for me. I suck at it, but I'm getting better, brother. I appreciate you coming on.
It's so hard, and it's so like the whole selling point, right? Because that's what that category is. You're making people happy, and I'm terrible at it. Like here, I would talk to you the whole time, and I will give out the little plug here of my own self because you just reminded me. Anyone that wants to follow along, and anyone that's been under a rock, I have my daughter, 12 years old, my son, 14 years old, racing the amateurs, kind of getting to do this whole thing a second time around. And we are documenting the whole thing on 22 TV over on YouTube. So anyway, follow along. And man, I hope to see you this weekend. I'm hoping maybe we can convince Ellie to let me jump on a plane and go up to Birmingham, and it'll be my kind of last race that I get to watch for Supercross. I love Supercross. So anyway,
yeah, you do. All right,
thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
man.
check out the 22 YouTube channel. Follow along. I get to see some behind the scenes stuff. It's a great story, and you can watch your progression. It'd be cool. Thanks for coming on, Reedy. You're the man. Absolutely the man, brother.
It was bad. Thanks.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.